With CSGO coming to an end, it's about time that we dive into some of the greatest players of all time. I've already covered the 5 greatest individuals in CSGO of all time. In this video, we'll dive into the specific role of the AWP, who are the greatest AWPer that we have ever seen in CSGO. There's so many names that you can throw out there, the likes of Guardian, Simple, Saivu. I don't want to give too much up, maybe I'll forget Fallen for that matter as well. I have created a top 5 and I'll give you my reasoning for my top 5 in this video. So stay tuned, it's gonna be a banger. And one more note before we dive into it, I would absolutely love if you guys would in the comments below let me know your top 5, because I'm not sure we're gonna agree on everything, but I'm curious to hear your perspective as well. Enjoy the video and thank you so much for watching. Before we dive into the top 5 and the 5th place, I want to mention some of the names that didn't quite make the list. We're talking the likes of JW, this Swedish AWPer who had a fantastic period with Fnatic, who had a fantastic ability to probably be the most annoying player that you could face in Counter-Strike. The CC AWP combination, he was just jumping around, playing like a wild guy, and super annoying. He's not quite top 5 on my list, but he's close. Another one that's close and would have been in the top 5 had he had a slightly longer career is Shiro. Right now, arguably one of the best AWPers in the game, but he hasn't been a professional player for that long, and when you look towards the longevity and when you look towards the history of the game, he needs maybe 1 or 2 more years of Counter-Strike before we put him on the list. Same could be said about Monesi. He's up there, of course, but doesn't have the longevity just yet to be on the list. The biggest miss out from my list, and one that's probably going to be very controversial for you guys, is Fallen. Fallen didn't quite make my top 5 list, and the reason being is I based this list on an individual perspective. Fallen is a great in-game leader. He's a legend of the game, and individually speaking, he has had periods in Counter-Strike where he was up there, considered one of the best AWP players of all time, but he's not quite on my list. I would give him the 6th place, no doubt, right here, right now, but I have valued 5 players above him in terms of raw abilities with the AWP, in terms of being able to dominate the game as an individual player. Now, if you take into account that he's an in-game leader as well, sure, you can make the case that Fallen is one of the all-time greats in Counter-Strike, no doubt about it, specifically with the AWP role, but this list is more so to highlight and celebrate the individual and mechanical skill of these players. So I'm sorry, Fallen, you didn't make it this time, but you're still a fantastic player. Now let's get to top 5. Number 5 on my list is Guardian. A player who was tearing it up from the beginning of CSGO. He's been a rock solid player, he's been a stable player, and he's been a guy that has always been feared with the AWP. 5 years in a row, he was placed in the top 20 players of the year by HLTV. With his 2nd place in 2015, he established himself as one of the greatest AWP players of all time in CSGO. His consistency, his ability to always hit the easy shots, his ability to be a player you could count on, and his clutching was out of this world at times as well. He's not the most flashy AWP player, he's not the Kenny S of the world, he's not the Monesi of the new generation. He was not the guy running around doing all these crazy flicks and crazy peaks. Nah, he was a rock solid player that when you were playing against him, which I've done many times, you freaking hated it. You knew that if he was holding an angle, let's say long car, Dust 2, he was holding that angle where you're running out catwalk. If you didn't throw 10 flashes at him, he would just kill you. And even if you did throw 10 flashes at him, he would find ways of killing you anyway. He was probably the best angle holder together with Device. And what I mean by that is that once they were posing on an angle, you just knew that they would hit the shot. That's why he was so good. The consistency coming out of Guardian, his awareness, I guess, his never making any mistakes. Sometimes you could argue that if you wanted to place Guardian a little higher on the list, you needed a little bit more explosivity coming out of him. Compare him to Fallen. Fallen was a close combat AWP player that was already in your face, whereas Guardian was more laid back, always sitting back, holding angles. So in terms of Guardian, one flaw to his game was maybe he was a bit too passive, but I would even give him the credit that over the years he became more and more aggressive. So it was a player in constant development. 5 years in a row, he placed within the top 20 players of the year. And as I said, in 2015, he was placed 2nd. He was a monster. His Na'Vi days, his time in FaZe, Guardian was a player you could count on, and that's why he deserved the 5th spot on my list. Number 4 on my list is none other than Saivu. And you may be a bit surprised. Why is ZywOo not high on the list? Well, the reason being that as a primary AWPer, I don't even think ZywOo is in his right role, in the sense that I believe, and I think ZywOo himself even have stated that before, that he's just as good, if not better, with a rifle. That's why ZywOo is one of the greatest players of all time. That's why I placed him second on my top 5 players of all time. Despite having a rather short career, he's dominated. He's never been outside of the top 2 on the HLTV top 20 players of the year, which in itself is crazy. Now, as I said, he's even stated before that he feels that he's just as good, if not better, with the rifle as he is with the AWP. And for that reason, you gotta look into his statistics. He actually, when he's playing Counter-Strike for Vitality, he plays just as much with the rifle as he does with the AWP. He can pick and choose. If he's having a game where he feels the AWP is gonna be fruitful for him, he'll pick that. But if he's in a game where he feels he needs to be a bit more mobile and maybe the strats are a little bit faster by Vitality, he'll just pick up an AK-47 on M4 and he'll get the job done. That's why ZywOo is fantastic as a player, but why I'm only placing him on a 4th place. Now again, consider it, right? I said Shiro hasn't had a long enough career to be considered into the top 5. Neither have ZywOo, had it not been for the fact that he's so goddamn good. It's probably one of the most natural skilled players that we've ever seen in the game. So I'll give him a 4th place, not higher, not lower, simply based to the fact that he's fantastic with the AWP, his clutching ability, his entering. Everything is just rock solid with ZywOo. Words is almost not needed when we describe him. But in terms of his placement with the AWP on the list, well, had he used it more, I'm sure he would be higher, but he's just as good with the rifle, so I guess we gotta give him that credit as well, which is why I'm only placing ZywOo on a 4th place. But make no mistake, he's the most natural gifted Counter-Strike player we've ever seen. Better than Simple, better than Forrest, better than Neo in that regard. He has had 4 years as a pro and he's been top 2 every single year. He's currently doing his 5th year and he's currently the best player in the world as I'm recording this video. So that's going to be 5 years where he's been placed number 1 3 times. Absolutely outstanding, but just not enough for my number 1 list here with the AWP. Too bad. Number 3 on my list is up for debate in the sense that Kenny S is a player that is hard to quantify. I will argue, and that's from playing with him, against him, and basically growing up in Counter-Strike with him, that he is the most skilled player that I've ever seen with the AWP. His ceiling with that gun was outstanding, to a point where you could almost argue that Counter-Strike back in the day, they nerfed the AWP. They made it harder to be as efficient with. It was made a little bit slower, etc., down to Kenny S, because he was freaking dominating with the AWP. Now, the problem for Kenny S has always been inconsistency. He's been rated 5 times in the top 20 players of the year by HLTV. He's placed 6th a couple of times, 7th, 8th, 11th, I believe as well. But he's never been in the top 5, or he's never been in the top 3. Over the course of a year, he would always have periods where he didn't play as well as he should have. Inconsistency. But I bet you, when he was on his game, when he was having one of those periods where he was feeling it, Kenny S was the hardest carry, or at least one of the hardest carries that we've ever seen in CSGO. His time in Titan in particular, I remember he was still young, immature, but my god was he great with the AWP. His rifling, decent, but not as good as ZywOo, not as good as Device, not as good as Simple, and that's why I'm also placing him slightly lower on the list right here, in the sense that he's top 3 for the reason that his AWP skills was his primary weapon. Everything else was just decent, good, but not great as the AWP. Had Kenny S had a better career, had he had a little more consistency, I think we could put him into the conversation where he could challenge for the 2nd spot, he could challenge for the 1st spot, but he wasn't consistent enough, and that's a little bit of a shame. I've said it many times. I think in terms of natural skill, just like I described with ZywOo, he's up there with the very best with the AWP. And of course, when you look towards a 10-year, 11-year, 12-year period with CSGO and you make a top 5, all the players that I'm mentioning right here are groundbreaking, elementally freaking great at the game. So is Kenny S. Unfortunately, inconsistency hurted his career, brought him down to a level where he's not considered the GOAT with the AWP, but definitely one of the most inspiring players and definitely one of the most fun players to watch playing with the AWP. His flicking abilities, his in-your-face combat style, his I guess sometimes just 6 cents for the game. It made it wonderful to watch him when he was on fire, but equally poor to watch him when he was not feeling it. So unfortunately, Kenius, you'll have to do with a 3rd place. I was even debating whether or not that should have been 4th switch with Saivu, but you'll take top 3 for now. Congratulations on a great career, my friend. Number 2 on my list, greatest AWP players of all time, is a Dane like myself. While saying that, I'm sure you guys can figure out who I'm going to talk about now. Of course, it's the greatest Dane to ever play Counter-Strike. It's the most winning Counter-Strike player of all time. It's a guy with 4 majors and a style with the AWP that everyone wants to study. None other than Device. He's still playing till this day. He made a comeback with Astralis and he's still up there. Now, I wouldn't argue he's a top 3 AWP player as of right now, but he's damn close to it. He's not on the level of Saivu and Simple as of right now, but when he was in his peak with the old Astralis, when they were winning all the tournaments, when they were winning the majors, Device was a rock solid player. I made the comparison to Guardian in the sense that once they were holding an angle, you knew that he would hit the shot. He's also arguably one of the smartest guys with the AWP. Well, big part of his game and big part of the reason why he was so good at Counter-Strike back then and now is his positioning, is his awareness. He knows exactly when to peek, when to fall back, when to go in for a duel. One of the trademarks of Device, and look out for that when you're watching him play till this day, is that he knows exactly when to pull out the pistol as well. He knows his limitations. In other words, with the AWP, he's not the most skilled player. He's not the guy hitting the most crazy flicks and I guess the mechanical most gifted player out there. But I think when you talk about all-around understanding of how to play the AWP, how to play Counter-Strike, how to position yourself, how to be a great teammate, how to communicate, how to win goddamn majors, no one comes close to Device. And that's why I have him as my 2nd greatest AWP player of all time. You cannot take away everything he did with Astralis. He was the carry in the team that won 4 majors with Astralis. He was doing so well, and we do want to argue, right, that Magix was doing a big part of it, Dupree was a big part of it, but at the end of the day, whenever Astralis needed to be bailed out, whenever they needed a star player on the team, you would always look towards Device. He was the one making the difference, and I have the uttermost respect for his comeback as well. He was sitting out for more than a year. He was depressed, he was not feeling too well, and again, we honestly don't even know what he went through as a human being. All I know is that he came out on the other side. He's a great ambassador for Counter-Strike now. He's playing some damn good Counter-Strike. He's a big inspiration to me. He's a big inspiration to a lot of Danish people out there, and given his career and what he's achieved, the prize money he's won, the title to his name, the MVPs, Device of course deserves to be on the list. He's the 2nd greatest AWP player of all time in CSGO, and I have no doubt that he will challenge for some of the same positions once we move into CS2, because what he's showing right now with Astralis, the comeback he made after a terrible time in NIP, I have the uttermost respect for it. Device, congratulations on a fantastic career in CSGO, and I goddamn hope that you'll stick around for CS2, because what you're doing right now is inspirational as hell. It shouldn't come as a surprise to you guys, but of course the greatest AWP player that we've ever seen in CSGO is none other than Simple. A monster from start to finish. Sure, the beginning of his career was controversial a little bit. He was not the greatest. He was placing top 8. I believe he was placing top 4 on the HLTV list of the best players of the year. Again, 6, 4. That's great, you know, but he wasn't the undisputed GOAT at the time being. He wasn't the undisputed best, even to a point where I remember he was in Na'Vi together with Guardian, who's also on the list, and Guardian was the primary AWP player. Simple was good enough with the rifle to say, listen, I'm young, I'll rifle, we'll figure it out. It didn't really work out that way, and I think Simple's primary role as the AWP player has been established ever since. It was hindsight 2020, perhaps a mistake that he wasn't AWPing back then, but his career from that point and onwards, let's be honest, right? There's no doubt that Simple is the all-time great of CSGO. Maybe Saivu is trying to contest it, but his longevity hasn't been as great as Simple's just yet. In terms of raw AWP skills, the clutches, the abilities, the moments, the highlight. We've got to see Simple do stuff with the AWP that none of us thought would be possible. Now, the same could be said about Kenny S, but where Kenny S' biggest flaw was the consistency, Simple was a consistency monster. There's been periods of months and months and months where he never posted a rating below 1. There's been periods where he was undoubtedly the undisputed best player in the world, where we didn't even have a conversation whether or not it was first or second. Sure, then Saivu came around and they pushed the limit. They were even enabling each other to become even better. I like to refer to the Cristiano Ronaldo Messi area in football. I'm 100% certain that had Messi not been around, then Ronaldo wouldn't have been as great as he is, and vice versa for Messi. They pushed each other to a new level, and we saw the same with Simple. He stepped up his game. Now, another thing with Simple is the controversies I was talking about. As a human being, as a teammate, not always the greatest. We've seen examples of him raging. We've seen examples of him maybe not being the nicest teammate, and take it from someone who know that myself. I've had periods where I by far were not one of the greatest teammates. I was not the nicest guy that I probably could have been and should have been. It feels like Simple have learned that. He went from being a case where he was all the way out here, where he's now found middle ground. I'm not trying to argue Simple is perfect, because he's not. No one in this world is perfect. We always have our flaws, but he's getting better and better and better. He seems to have matured a lot while still maintaining a high level. Now, one thing I will say here, just to give you a bit of a teaser. Now, in CSGO, he's the number 1. He tops my list, no doubt. While moving into CS2, the Simple we've seen the past 6 to 8 months haven't been at the same level. So unless he steps it up one more, unless he finds that inner fire, he finds that nitty gritty, he finds that grind, then maybe when we make the list for CS2 in a couple of years, Simple won't be number 1. And that's a test I want to put to him. Simple, you have inspired everyone with what you've done on the server. You are a fantastic Counter-Strike player, and you will go down in history in CSGO as the greatest of all time. Now, I would like to see it in CS2, and I know that's a lot to ask for. You've done tremendously well. You're dealing with your life. You have a life, and I appreciate you as much as I possibly can. But from a fan perspective, I want you to get back to the absolute best. So when I do this list in CS2 in a couple of years, I want to have your name in contention. Simple, you had a great career. You topped the list. You're number 1. Congratulations. That's it for the top 5 greatest AWP players of all time in CSGO. I sincerely hope you enjoyed the video. I would absolutely love if you guys would leave a comment below the video telling me your top 5. Leave a like, refer the video to a friend. I'm working very hard on this content. Again, all feedback is good feedback as well. Other lists you want me to make, maybe make a CSGO dream team, other ideas for a video, shoot them below in the comments so I can get to work. I'm a creator. I love standing in front of the camera. I love talking to you, and I love speaking about Counter-Strike. It gets me very passionate, as you can probably feel. So give me some ideas, and I'll try to execute as quickly as possible. Thank you so much for watching.